директор своей компании, которая называется CCCO Communications, и президент Европейской конфедерации организаций контактных центров. По-английски она звучит как European Confederation of Contact Center Organizations. Давайте поприветствуем господин Vincent Vanden Bossche.
Well, thank you, Alexander. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try firstly to speak as slowly as possible. And secondly, during the 25 next minutes, I will try to give you a global overview of the study we made last year about comparative analysis of the different countries in Europe about the contact center market. The first question I always get or got from the audience is, why did you do that? Maybe I'm as crazy indeed, because it's a huge job and it's a challenging job. But I think that if we made that before, the first reason for which we did that was it didn't exist. We had no comparative data about the European market for consultancy, for people who would like to invest in different territories of Europe. It was just kind of a dessert. And that's the reason why we've decided to make that study. So I'm going to try now the analysis. What's on the list for today? I'm going to start with a short introduction. I'm going to give you the key findings. I'm going to give you information about our communication, because there is a white book that will be published on 15th of April this year. We have a dedicated website, but I come later on with all this information. And finally, I will give you what's on the list for this year, because we're going to continue this study, of course. Why did we do that? As I told you, I'm sorry. This is the global scope of the study. This is, of course, what we call literature. It's create value for individual companies and contact center sector through the realization of reliable, up-to-date, independent, comprehensive benchmark of contact center industry in Europe. I think this is the global scope. It doesn't need more comments. What about the methodology? Because there is a big difference with the other studies that existing in Europe. I speak here about people like Frost Sullivan, Data Monitor, Dimension Data, for instance. The big difference is that we are working on real data. We're not working on extrapolations. What's the difference? Extrapolation means that you're going to take into consideration the size of the country, the number of people living in a country, and then trying to define the number of contact center and people working on that. Let me give you an example. Last year, we've been called by Frost and Sullivan in order to collaborate. In some words, they would like to buy the study. We refuse it, and we say, okay, we can collaborate together. Please, do you have information about the outsourcing level in Europe? And they say, yes, it's easy. It's 12.5% in all the countries. Everybody knows, if you are a contact center expert, that these are not real numbers. So that's the reason why we were a little bit afraid with, and we considered that we had to go deeper in the analysis. So our methodology is based on 3 steps. Firstly, the data collection. Data collection is not easy. Therefore, we are working close with the local professional body. Thanks for Dimitri to support us. We are working with universities, and we are working with companies who are in some part of Europe very active and very popular, and who have interesting data. The second step of the study is to compile the data, and that's even worse, because sometimes you feel that you got some numbers who are not correct, and then you have to look for the truth, and it takes a lot of time to do this. And the third step is, of course, the communication, to a sort of communication, a white book, and a dedicated website. Of course, when you make such a study, you need to, I dare to say that, some money to make that. And therefore, we would like, once again, to thank our sponsors, because without them it was impossible to make it. And of course, we are working in a close relationship with them, and they can, of course, count on us when they need us to give a presentation all over Europe. That's what we did for 1 year now. Let's start with the analysis. When you have to face such a challenge, of course, 30 countries in Europe, it's not an easy business. That's the reason why we've decided to work on methodology based on the clustering. This means that in Europe, you know that you have different regions. You have different countries which are quite similar on topic of contact centers, and we've decided to work based on clustering, one for Western Europe, one for Southern, one for Northern Europe. It's not, not really new, but of course you have the list here of the different clusters we used to make the study. What about the findings now? First information, and this is a very important information. We have a total seats identified of 2.5 million seats in Europe. It's a lot. Insert, you have the ranking of the different countries. This is no big surprise. This means that the fact that United Kingdom, Germany, and France are the 3 first position is not big surprise. But Russia is now in 6th position. This is brand new. This is a brand new market, and we know that it's exploding, but we will see that a little bit later on in details. What about the active population? We can estimate then 3.5 million people are employed in this sector in Europe. This means 1% of the total active population of Europe is working in the sector. Sometimes, and I'm working in this sector for 16 years now, when I hear that this is not a job, I'm wondering if those people who are in front of me talking about the same things than I am. Because this is a large number of people working in a sector or in an industry. It's even more important if we take into consideration that there are in different other countries different categories of people. You have workers, you have employees. If we compare that to the employees, it's 1.6% of the total employees working in the sector. Compared with the US, it's 3%. Another concept that we have analyzed, you know that in different countries you have different topics. You have the full-time equivalent, you have the head count, you have the seat. So I suppose that you're familiar with those concepts. And the ratio that you see here are the ratio that we need to use in order to correlate the numbers we got. In Russian, we can estimate that 0.1% of the active population is working in the sector, and that we have 100,000 full-time equivalent people active in the sector. The number of contact centers, we can estimate that there are 35,000 call centers existing in Europe. What's surprising here is to see that if you have the most important number of people working in the UK, the most important number of contact centers are in Germany. Why? Because in Germany they use a definition when a contact center is considered as an entity with at least 5 people working in the entity. In any other countries, it's at least 10 people. That's the big difference, and that's the reason why you have more contact centers in Germany than in the UK, for instance. Average seats in Europe, it's 74 position. This is an important information. The market growth, so the compound annual growth rate in Europe is 4.6% global. You will see the difference later on during the presentation. This is an important information because we are in the middle of the worst economical crisis ever. You open the television, you see the information, they just speak about that, and that's true. But if you have a sector of activity with a compound annual growth rate of 4.6%, this is an important information. This means that this sector is growing, it's evolving, it's professionalizing, and this is a real important information for the people and for the politicians that consider that, yeah, maybe it's a job, but that's not a real job. I hear that constantly in all the countries of Europe. What is this call centers finally? This is an important job. This is the job of today, of the present, and of the future. If we speak about seats, we have a growth rate of 4%, and in Russia, we can estimate that the compound annual growth rate is 30% in 2012, which is a lot. And you will see later on in a graph that we can consider that this is explosive evolution. What about the outsourcing? We can estimate that 21% of the total full-time equivalent people working in the sector are involved in outsourcing activity. What's really surprising here is that you see that in the Baltics and in Southern Europe, outsourcing level is very high. Russians, it's estimated 13.5%. This is the country sheet of Russia. This means that you have here the country key ratios compared to cluster and the total volume in Europe. You will see, but I have to come later on this, that this is the generic page you will find on the website dedicated to the benchmark specific for Russia. Well, if I had to show one slide for this study, it will be this one. You know, when you are a consultant, that kind of slide is, of course, a dream, because you can speak 25 minutes just on that. But I have no time for that today. Let me just explain that what we've tried to do here is to, how can I say, give another definition to the way we can describe the evolution of the contact center in Europe. Because if you can see the graph here, you have two axes. The first one is the active population, and the second one downstairs is the growth of employment. Before, in place of the active population, we had the concept of maturity of the market. What does that mean, maturity of a market? I can tell you that there are two markets in Europe that are mature. It's UK and I think now Germany. The rest, I think that there is still a lot of work before to be mature. What we've done here, we have divided the global European market in three groups. The first one with a conjunctural growth, and I will explain why. The second one with a steady one, and the third one with, we changed explosive and expansive, because explosive was a little bit, how can I say that, aggressive. Conjunctural, what does that mean? Which are the countries who are located in this group? These are the biggest one. So the most people you have active in the sector, the less high is, of course, the growth. It's normal. It's evolving with the conjuncture. Economical crisis, not economical crisis, is just at the same level, around 1 to 2% every year. Steady, these are countries like Belgium, for instance, which are 5.5% growth rate every year, but slipping more and more to the group of the conjunctural, also for the same reason, because the market is on the way of maturity. Expensive, and you can see here that you don't see Ukraine, you don't see Russia, because if I have to put them, I think that the slides will be on the other side of the room here. It was impossible to put them on the graph because in Ukraine you have, for instance, 50% growth rate, in Russia 30%, so it's a lot, and those markets are really exploding at the moment. What about the vision of the contact center landscape within 10 years? Well, based on the information we have now in 2022, and unfortunately I don't have a lot of time to explain all the details of these slides, but I'm available after the presentation or during the break to answer your questions. We can estimate that we will have 1.5 million full-time equivalent within 10 years, with 1.3% of the active population working in the sector within 10 years, globally, of course. What will be the characteristic of the next decade? I think that in Eastern Europe, we will still have a strong growth, around 12%. Central Europe, around 5%. In Southern Europe, we can estimate that we will have a potential growth of 8%, but it's dependent on different factors and on different elements that we can quantify at the moment. Western and Northern Europe, we can estimate 1 to 2%, so typical conjunctural growth for the next 10 years, with the characteristic that you can see here on the slide. For countries like Switzerland, Belgium, and France, we're still hesitating, but I think that we can speak about 3 to 4% for the next 10 years, and this is the growth rate a year in terms of employment, of course. This growth will be driven mainly by in-house activities, by inbound activities. This is, of course, a small surprise, but it's not, I think. B2C activity, increasing integration front and back office. I think that the telephone will still be the way to communicate it, but we will see that it's possible to see other way to communicate too, and increased professionalization of management, mainly in the HR domain. The website. So as I told you, regarding the communication, we've planned to communicate it on two levels. Firstly, with a white book. A white book is a book of, I think, on average 180 pages with full detailed analysis of the different countries in Europe. This will be published around 15th of April. One important information for you, this is not to buy. This means that this is impossible to get this book for your private use. The only way you can get the information is to take contact with one of our sponsors, and they will decide if they give the information or not. Because the purpose is not to make money on this, but just to bring scientific value in the report. Maybe in the future we will change our mind, I don't know, but at this moment we have an agreement with our sponsor, we don't sell it. Because I think that if you have the support of your sponsor, you can make money a second time on their back. So it's just simple. The website. The website has been opened on the 15th of November last year on behalf of all of the sponsors. And as you can see, there are two levels in the website. The first one, generic pages, so you can find generic information about the different countries. And if you want to enter into the details, once again, take contact with one of our sponsors, and they will decide if they give the information or not. This website will be open in German next month and in French in June. It's normal 4 languages, which are English, German, French, and we still plan to make a Spanish version. This is a pilot site at the moment. This means that the official website address will be with EU at the end and not with BE. What's on the list for this year? Of course, we are going to make an actualization of the data. A gap reduction, because sometimes for some countries we have numbers that we would like to verify a little bit deeply. The focus group will be this year not only the country, but a region or a hotspot within the country. Let me give an example. In Germany, you have Berlin, which is typical a city of call centers. We would like to know why, typically in Berlin and not in other cities in Germany, for instance. We would like to make an analysis of activity and sectors, outsourcers, and also an analysis of the sourcing flows. We would like to understand better at European level the nature of the relation between an outsourcer and an internal contact center. Where is it coming from? Where is it going? And of course, but this will be, of course, complicated, comp and ben. This means salary and information related to HR. But we are not falling into despair. I think it's possible to get. Last part of my speech today, it's not about the benchmark, but I think that the organizer have asked me to give my advice about the future of the contact center. For your information, because I don't think I will have the time to go deeply in the details today, I refer in this presentation to an article I've wrote last year in a book made by one of our sponsors, which is Competence Call Center in Germany. And you can find all the details of this article, which is on the website of CCC. For your information, it's www.yourccc.com. The article is online, so you can find all the details. I think that regarding the evolution of the business in the next 10 years, I think that indeed our dream will be to reduce absenteeism, to diminish the real estate cost, to increase the productivity, and of course, to increase customer and employee satisfaction. I don't think I invent a lot of things while saying that. In 10 points, I will try to summarize my analysis of the image I have of the contact center sector within 10 years. I think that indeed the new devices will be user-driven. This means that we will live in another landscape for the contact center. Just like I say here, move your hands and the computer will open the application, transfer the call, type the words, pull up product information. In other words, I think that the interaction between the employee and the customer will be more holographic than it is for now. Software as a service will be, of course, prevalent. This is, I think, reality already for now. And the social customer service will be more than ever top of the list. I suppose you know that, how can I say that, social media can, of course, enhance your business, but it also can kill your business. So you better watch out, because now on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, it's going faster. When customers are not happy with a thing you did, they can kill you, they can destroy you in 5 minutes. And so I think that more and more companies in Western Europe try to pay attention to this. Virtualization, I think that indeed interaction will happen via live presentation. Transactions will be much faster and require less paperwork. I would like to give a special word about the vocal biometrics. Vocal biometrics is a technology developed in the Silicon Valley in Israel, in Tel Aviv. And this system can recognize an individual voice print within 3 to 7 seconds. Believe me, when you open on internet your banking account, you speak to your computer and they open your banking account, it's quite surprising to see that. And you can tell me, yeah, but this can be dangerous if someone is, using my voice or imitating my voice. Of course, they checked from all parts. If you have, of course, the opportunity to see that, please do it because it can save a lot of money. I think in the banking sector is really open to this new technology. Enterprise-wide customer service, I think that the personalization of the service will be the motto, or has to be the motto in the next 10 years. Smarter working, I think that it will be different other ways to work within 10 years in the contact centers. As you can see here, they'll be much smaller, much more distributed, and will handle a significantly smaller volume of interactions. The 3 last points are really important to me because I think that this is something that, and especially in Western Europe, companies are not anticipating. Let me tell you why. I have kids, like a lot of people. I have twins, they are 7 years old, and those guys, they are just playing with iPads, with computer, with the new technology. They communicate it differently, they're talking differently, and those guys will be the customer of the next generation. This means that if you don't anticipate this reality, that those young guns are communicating not with emails like us, because we like, just like the old-fashioned guys, to develop our argumentation, different points, to be really detailed in a way to express. They just chat. They just want a fast answer to their request. And this is something we have to anticipate, because if we don't do this, I think that we will have to face a lot of problems. We will have to adapt their way to communicate, because they don't speak the same language, believe me. Sometimes I'm lost, and I'm not so old, but I'm lost, it happens. And another point will be also that, especially in Western Europe, I don't know if you feel that here, but we need to anticipate a reversal of the business model of the contact center. Let me give you an example. In a country where I lived a few years ago in Belgium, I had to face the competition of a lot of outsourcers for different business. I was a consultant within an internal contact centers, and we need to work with an outsourcers. What did they offer? The only thing they offered was the lowest price. And believe me, maybe I'm stupid. It's possible. The fact is that if you don't pay a lot, you can get quality for your service. So I don't understand why you just want to make competition on the lowest price. I think that you need, of course, to change, to reverse the business model of the contact center and to put the accent on the quality of the service. This is the most important thing. If you want to keep the customers, please invest in the quality of service. I think that, and I suppose that you're aware of this, Forrester made a study last year. When they asked the questions, are you ready to pay more money to have more quality of service? 80% of the answer are positive. It's normal. God save me. But I think that this is an important thing. So we anticipate this, and we see that different operators in Western Europe know more and more understood that they have to invest on quality and not only on volume. This is the big difference. This is, of course, something you have to take into account for the next 10 years. And finally, the voice of customer concept. This is also something I heard constantly, voice of customer. No, when you analyze the concept of voice of customer, once again, I can tell you that in the country I lived, I was not really sure that people knew what voice of customer means. They talk about it. They say, yes, yeah, okay, we are a voice of customer concept. Yes, but practically they're not, and that's the problem. So more and more, I think that those concepts have to evolve, and we as professionals are there to push this. So just like I said, I hope that it will be the reality.